Disney Lorcana Challenge, or DLC, no, not that kind of DLC, is next week in Atlanta, Georgia, and for a lot of Lorcana players, this will be their first major competitive TCG event. I'm Lorcana Thanos, and here's 13 tips heading into DLC at Atlanta. Taylor's version, of course. Taylor, don't sue me.
You could not live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me.
So you secured your ticket for the event. Now what? Let's discuss what to do leading up to the big event. You need to first figure out what deck you're going to play, but how exactly do you do that? Unless I already have a deck in mind, I always evaluate the current metagame and I break down the top 4 to 6 decks based on performance. I deconstruct the decks and I see what the overall strategy and win con for each deck is. Then you want to find what each deck's strength and weaknesses are, and you can proceed from there. Once you've done your research, find the deck that speaks to you and your playstyle. From there, it's time to get to building. If you aren't a skilled deck builder, I think for learning, it's perfectly acceptable to go onto YouTube or a deck builder site and look up a list for the deck you want to try. And from there, see how it does. You may find that the list in its entirety isn't for you, but maybe like the core of it is. And you can adjust from there, maybe change ratios to your liking. So once we've selected our deck, what's next? Practice, practice, practice.
We're in here talking about practice.
This is the biggest thing leading up to an event, and not a lot of players spend time adequately practicing. You have to put in your 10,000 hours if you want to succeed. You need to know every play line that your deck can do at all times, in any situation, in any matchup. You should know every card in your deck per ratio, card by card, so you know the math of when you can expect to draw any card in any given situation. Now, a lot of players will spend more time focusing on the matchups they aren't favored in to get more reps in against that particular deck or decks, which on the surface does make sense. However, that can take away from testing against other matchups you will see. Do not strictly test against the deck or decks you have the hardest time against. Be sure to account for everything that you may see in the room, especially the top contenders. The best way to go about testing is going to be with a play group or your locals. If that's just not something that's available to you, then using Discord for webcam games or an online simulator such as Pixelborn is your next best option. Just make sure that your play group has players that are better than you. This is a great way to hone your skills, learn from your mistakes as you go, find ways to play and play often. I know a lot of players take the results of an online simulator or client as gospel, and this is where a lot of players get tripped up and get into trouble. They will say something like, well, my deck wins a lot on Pixelborn, so why did I scrub out of the event? Okay, well, that's because of RNG. The numbers work out very differently in a virtual simulator than in reality. Virtual cards don't have weight, so the algorithm is just doing math and spitting out cards at certain probabilities in a given situation. IRL events don't work that way. Paper cards have weight, and foil cards have more weight compared to non foils naturally. The way that a deck is shuffled and cut can also greatly impact how the cards are going to line up in a IRL environment. A lot of players who only play online don't think about this and they typically struggle at first until they understand the lesson. Am I saying that an online simulator isn't helpful? No, it's actually very helpful and it's a good way to crank out games and get a lot of testing in. What I'm saying is don't take it as 100% truth as to what a deck's performance will be in a real life environment. Expanding a little bit more on that, learn from your failure and mistakes. As Master Yoda said in The Last Jedi,
The greatest teacher failure is.
this is so true. A lot of players also make the mistake of just mashing games and testing and not taking a second to see when and where they made that key mistake that cost them the game. Do not play on autopilot. You are wasting your time just mashing games if you don't learn from them. During the practice phase, a big misstep a lot of players will make is they will practice with their deck a ton and they'll play against all the top decks, but they will never play the other top decks themselves. You will get a greater understanding of what these decks want to do if you sit down and actually play with the decks yourself. Sure, you can look at a list and say, oh yeah, I get it, but to understand it, you need to get your hands on it and play with it. To quote Sun Tzu in The Art of War, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. And I do think that this rings very true in the competitive TCG environment. So we've done our testing. Now what? So the week or days before the event, I stopped testing. I know this may seem counterintuitive, but the reason for this is to simply take your mind off of the event and try not to stress about it. Do something else you enjoy leading up to the event, whether that's going for a walk, going to the gym, watch a movie, have a good meal, whatever it is. Take your mind off of the event. Now, unless you really need the additional time to practice, due to maybe have like a crazy work schedule, or you just have that like one horrific matchup that you just can't overcome, then by all means take the additional time, get those reps in. But if you're good, take a break. Now, the night before the event, get some sleep. A lot of players don't get adequate sleep and they don't perform well at events. They stay up all night, hanging out with their friends or teammates, and doing last minute testing, goofing off. Yes, even last minute deck building. And as I said, people don't perform well without a full night's rest. Please get some rest. Be sure to have your bag fully packed the night before the event as well. Make sure you have your deck box, your deck list, mat, dice, a way to track lore, whether that's paper and pen or one of the little spin counters, your trade binder if you want, extra sleeves in case they rip throughout the day. This is very important. Please make sure you have extra sleeves on you. And also bring hand sanitizer. That is something I think a lot of people forget about. But you will be, fist bumping or shaking hands. You're going to be meeting people. People are touching your cards, and you don't know where their hands have been. So please, in order to avoid getting sick, um, please bring hand sanitizer. Also, as a friendly reminder, be sure your sleeves are opaque. You don't want to be able to see through the back of the card through your sleeves. Most TCGs don't allow sleeves where you can see the back of the card because they could be considered mark, or maybe your opponent did like mark them somehow. So just make sure that the sleeves are opaque. Fill out the deck list ahead of time. Do not fill the deck list out at the event. Two reasons for this: you will, one, save a ton of time by having your deck list filled out ahead of time. Plus, it keeps your deck secret when you're at the event. There will be players that will walk around and they'll be scouting to see what other players are playing, because they wait until the last minute and they fill out the deck list at the event. So it's the day of the event. What do we do? Well, first thing you want to do the morning of the event is eat breakfast. And you would think that this seems like a no-duh thing, but a lot of players, they get up and they just drive to the event and they don't eat. And this is another thing that can cause you not to perform optimally. So it goes without saying, if you're hungry, you're not going to do well and your brain won't function at peak levels. So please eat breakfast. I hate to say it, but I got to. This really should be something that doesn't need to be said, but please shower and brush your teeth. A lot of Lorcana players are very new to the competitive TCG environment, but the stereotype exists for a reason. TCG players, they smell, they don't practice good hygiene, and I'm very curious how the Lorcana community is going to react to this particular topic post DLC Atlanta. Don't really want to see a lot of tweets about it, but I think it's going to happen. Just keep in mind that you're going to be around hundreds to thousands of people. It's going to be hot, and even with the AC on, body heat, it is a thing. People will be sweating. We're going to be all, up close to each other. With that, on top of taking a shower and brushing your teeth, please properly apply deodorant. A lot of players, you guys are going to spend $500 to $1,000 on some cardboard, but you won't spend $4 to $5 on a stick of deodorant. Like, what are we doing? Poor hygiene. It's a poor representation of yourself. Please take care of yourself and be courteous to the people around you. Some TCGs like Yu-Gi-Oh, for example, they have a hygiene policy that they have to enforce now. because this issue has just become so rampant at competitive level events. Something to keep in mind: please arrive at the venue early. This event is taking place during a holiday weekend. MomoCon is going on. It's downtown Atlanta and it's the weekend. Parking will be limited. You may have to walk a couple blocks to the venue. You may be stuck in an Uber. If you didn't check in early Friday night, you need to get there early to secure your spot in the check-in line, which will take a while, probably an hour or two, due to the amount of people coming to the event. So you want to make sure you get there early to wait in line so that you are fully registered and checked in for the event. Something I don't think a lot of people think about: food is scarce at events, so I would recommend you bring a bottle of water and some snacks to eat throughout the day. You want to make sure that the snacks are not messy, they're not greasy. It's something that you can quickly put in your bag, eat between rounds, and that way you're keeping that brain functioning. And because if you're going to time and around all the time, you're not going to have time to eat. So having snack and water on you is a good way to keep it moving and you're not hungry. Once the event starts, take a deep breath, relax, remember that it's just a game and you're not going to be able to control everything that happens throughout the day. Take the time to think about your plays, do them one at a time, just slow down. Just don't slow play, be very cautious of that. Be cautious of the clock as well. And typically, if you can, try to sit where you can see the clock. Um, Speaking of the clock, this lesson typically works better in a best of 3 environment, but learn when to scoop. The best players understand this concept because if they are in a position that isn't favorable to them, it's better to scoop the game, move on to the next one. So this has several benefits because it obviously will save you time in the round, but it also withholds information from your opponent about what cards you have in your deck. And I found with Lorcana, a general rule of thumb is if you're at a 10 plus lore disparity, you typically will lose the game. And since every round is timed, it may be beneficial to scoop game one and move on to game two. Lastly, it may sound generically Disney or corny, but have fun. This is the first major competitive Lorcana event. So let's enjoy it together and I'll see you there. Those are my tips heading into Disney Lorcana Challenge Atlanta. Hopefully these were beneficial to you. And if I missed something, be sure to let me know down in the comments below. Remember, the hardest choices require the strongest wills.